Well, hello. Good morning. Buenos dias. So, another Sunday, October 1st. Time is a haulin' butt. Uh, we are in a place of speeding up, I think. And this is something of a good thing. As I say this, I'm kind of just going stream of consciousness here. He says in A Course in Miracles that the whole reason why A Course in Miracles was given at the time that it was given is because as humanity is sliding back spiritually, we're also given the opportunity of undergoing what he calls a celestial speed up. And so we're giving these teachings that really trigger us in a deep and major way so that we can cover a lot of ground in a little time. Because if you think about time, often it's referred to as a spiral. Time is like a Fibonacci spiral. And it starts at a singularity. And then it kind of spirals out and down. In fact, he says that this is what time is. He calls it a spiral in A Course in Miracles. And as you're going back up the spiral in your spiritual evolution, it goes into what's called a concrescence. In other words, as you get closer to the singularity, things speed up exponentially. The book of Daniel talks about this, that we will run to and fro and knowledge will increase and things will speed up. This is the end prophecy of the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. And then as we go into the singularity, it says in the book of Daniel that we will become like the Zoharim, we'll become brilliant or splendorous like the stars. In other words, we're going to burst into the light body through this spiritual evolution. And so this is what A Course in Miracles is also saying, is that as we unfold our spiritual nature, we're undergoing an alchemical transformation. Wow, stream of consciousness continues. So he actually also says in A Course in Miracles that where once you thought your body was, there will be his light. And this is such a beautiful alchemical marriage of our soul with God, that there's nothing more intimate than your felt experience and your felt presence. What you feel as your body presence will be his light. And so his light will permeate all. You have those beautiful hymns in the Odes to Solomon, the Odes of Solomon. It's the first Christian hymn book that we have. The earliest church was singing these hymns, and I've shared them on occasion here on Sunday morning. The Odes of Solomon, it's all about this weaving of the light of God into the body in this alchemical transformation. What you get also in other traditions like Neidan in Chinese internal alchemy or Taoist alchemy, this is exactly what they're doing. They're cultivating the light. And the end game of Neidan, or internal alchemy in Taoism, is that you create the spiritual body. This is the spiritual alchemy, and we're going to be talking about this today. We'll look at it through the lens of Sufism, primarily, a little bit of Patanjali Yoga, and A Course in Miracles. And we're going to see how all of this kind of comes together in the here and the now of what we're dealing with in terms of, which is really the first stage of alchemy, which is called calcination or purification. So in order to undergo this ascension back into the singularity and transform into the body of light, you first have to purge yourself of all of these lead-like qualities within the psyche. And so these impurities that are hindering us, we're going to look at primarily one of those today. And we'll wait on announcing that as we move along, you'll see. So good? All right. Let's take a moment and breathe. Come into the here and the now with the breath. Come to rest in the silence. And always know that the witnessing state of your inmost awareness is the silence. And everything else is phenomena. Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your imagination, your bodily sensation, all that's arising, that is being witnessed, is phenomena. That will come and go. It's all in flux, it's temporary and impermanent. The silent ground of being that is ever awake and ever watching is the only changeless aspect of our nature. And we come to ground in this foundation, this heart of being. And so it is. So let's start with a little bit from Rumi's Mathnawi, Book 2. Remember, on this theme of alchemy. Come, O you that seek the remedy, set your eye on non-spatiality, as the eye of one about to be killed turns toward the spirit. This spatial world has been produced from that which is without spatial relations. For the world has received the relation of place from placelessness. Okay, so he's demarcating these two levels of being or reality. This non-manifest absolute realm that is beyond time and space and locality and manifestation, and what is a reflection or emanation of that, which is our experienced cosmos, right? Plato referred to it as the realm of being versus the realm of becoming, right? So Rumi's saying, set your attention on the realm of pure being, this non-spatiality, and you will come to know that this realm of time and space is unreal. And you will have rooted yourself in the deathless state of the unborn, the uncreated energies of God, as it's referred to in the Orthodox Christian tradition. In fact, this is also another tradition of alchemy. They don't call it that. They call it theosis. So to this day, on Mount Athos, for instance, in Greece, the Orthodox monks there are undergoing this deep ascetic practice of, doing the Jesus prayer and all of the other practices that they do to literally cultivate the body of light. And there are many stories up to our present day, like St. Paisios and St. Porphyrios, that have undergone this alchemical transformation or theosis, where they come into the light of the uncreated energies of God. And this is what Rumi is saying. Set your attention on the uncreated energies of God, which is grace, which is the undying. Turn back from existence towards non-existence if you seek the Lord and belong to the Lord. This non-existence is the place of income. Do not flee from it. This existence of more and less is the place of expenditure. And we're going to see how this plays out. So that the unmanifest, uncreated, unborn realm of absolute being, pure divinity, is the realm of income, ever abundant. Our realm is a realm of poverty and debt and beggarliness, right? We'll see how all this plays out. Since God's workshop is non-existence, outside of the workshop there is only worthlessness, right? Abundance or debt, deprivation. Put into our heart words which may move you to mercy, O gracious one. From you come both the prayer and the answerer. From you, safety. If we have spoken faultily, correct us. Now listen to this. You have the alchemy whereby you may transmute our mistakes. And though it be a river of blood, you will make it the life-giving Nile. Such alchemical operations are your work. Such elixirs are your secrets. You did beat water and earth together, from water and clay you did mold the body of man. So we want to hover on that statement. You have the alchemy whereby you may transmute us. And get this too, he's saying it without saying it, that you may transmute us from a river of blood, right? Biological, to the life-giving Nile. St. Paul says this in his epistle to the first epistle to the Corinthians. He says, we start off as earthly, and we are a living soul, but then we're transformed into the heavenly or celestial as a life-giving spirit. So we go from earthly to celestial. This is all at the very heart of our sacred traditions, this transformation from the base level to the divine level. And so Rumi is saying that such alchemical operations are the work of God. Such elixirs are his secrets. And so in order to begin this process, we have to undergo a purification, because we have been so conditioned and bought into this lower existence as the only reality, that this higher existence, which is uncreated, unmanifest, eternal, seems at best to be a wishful or a hopeful idea or concept. We must make that our reality. And in order to make that reality, he says, you have to long for it like one who's dying. This comes back to this idea in Zen. You cannot find Zen or that unborn state unless you're like a person being held under water wants air. That same desire to breathe is the same desire to open to that uncreated state. Otherwise, you're not going to undergo the transformations of the heart that are necessary. Because remember, we read this, I think it was from Hafiz. He says, your heart needs to be polished. But if you can't tolerate a little rubbing, how are you going to undergo this alchemical transformation? It's going to take everything you got. So that's why Jesus says, before you put your hand to the plow, know this is the kingdom of heaven, and you're ready to make that choice. Don't look back. Don't be like Lot's wife. So it's this idea where the commitment must be strong and sure, and you'll have confidence that this higher world will make itself known to you. Right? It's God's work to alchemize your being. But you have to be willing. You have to be ready to undergo the transformation of your heart. And so one of the things that we want to recognize then in giving up this faulty use of the heart in identifying with this lower world is that this world is running on, for the most part, the worship of the god of wealth. Right? Money makes the world go round. And that's why Jesus will say in the Gospel of Matthew, you can't serve two masters. You will love one and hate the other. You cannot serve God and Mammon. Mammon is the god of wealth, the god of financial stability and security. If you think that your spiritual walk will go in a way where you're assured success all the way through, then you're not going to be ready to take that little bit of rubbing or that real strong polishing Because sometimes, the spiritual life goes right to the pocketbook and you lose everything for a little while, or things get threatened for a little while, or it's really shaky for a little while. Who are you when that happens? What's your character? You're undergoing a spiritual purification. Now, we're going to also see how all of this plays out, not only at the personal level, but also at the injustice of how money is being misused in our world. We're going to see this through the biblical lens. I hope you enjoy all of this. So this book is The Purification of the Heart by Sheikh Hamza Youssef. He's an excellent representative of Islam. If you're interested, he has plenty of videos on YouTube that you can look at. He's quite brilliant. But he writes this. If we examine the trials and tribulations, wars, and other conflicts, every act of injustice all over the earth, we'll find they are rooted in human hearts. Covetousness, the desire to aggress and exploit, the longing to pilfer natural resources, the inordinate love of wealth and position, and other maladies are manifestations of diseases found nowhere but in the heart. Every criminal, miser, abuser, scoffer, embezzler, and hateful person does what he or she does because of a diseased heart. If hearts were sound, these actions would no longer be a reality. So if you want to change our world, do not begin by rectifying the outward. Instead, change the condition of the inward. Everything we see happening outside of us is in reality coming from the unseen world within. It is from the unseen world that the phenomenal world emerges. And it is from the unseen realm of our hearts that all actions spring. The well-known civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. said that in order for people to condemn injustice, they must go through 4 stages. The first stage is that people must ascertain that there are injustices being perpetrated. In his case, it was injustices against African Americans in the United States. The second stage is to negotiate. That is, approach the oppressor and demand justice. If the oppressor refuses, King said, that the third stage will come about, which is self-purification, which starts with the questions, are we ourselves wrongdoers? Are we ourselves oppressors? The fourth stage then is to take action after true self-examination, after removing one's own wrongs before demanding justice from others. So this is what makes us powerful in the world, right? Like Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount again, remove the plank from your own eye. Then you'll have impact on helping your brother remove the speck out of his own eye. So in order to have weight and spiritual merit in the world, we must first undergo this inner transformation. We must recognize and purify wherever we are miserly, withholding, shortchanging others, looking to take advantage for, an easy buck or whatever that may be. We must scrutinize ourselves. This is the polishing of the heart. And if we're not able to take a little bit of a rub on this self-scrutiny, then we're going to no longer see or have the power to change the current situation. So then a little bit more here. We of the modern world are reluctant to ask ourselves when we look at the terrible things happening, why do they occur? And if we ask that with all sincerity, the answer will come back in no uncertain terms. All of this is from our own selves. in so many ways, we have brought this upon ourselves. This is the only empowering position that we can take. The Quran implies that if a people oppress others, God will send another people to oppress those oppressors. So it's this cause and effect. So in order to break the chain, we have to recognize our role in being in a country that is operating along these principles. And because we're so conditioned within this reality of mammon, of the love of money, where are we selling out? Where are we compromising? Where are we becoming a reflection of the diseased heart within our collective society? Right? So I'm thinking about doing a class on the Bible, and it will be a class that will, open the Bible up to the higher teachings as well, so that we can see that it's not really a religious book the way that we've been accustomed to thinking of it as. In fact, when you look at the socio-political dimension of the Bible, I think many of us who are progressive and revolutionary at heart will see that God's social political paradigm is really that everyone wins and no one is poor. And what you'll see the prophets of the Old Testament and right into the New Testament, especially with Jesus and the Roman Empire, is that these instruments of God in the world are railing against the oppressive, predatory economy that the elites are using in order to extract wealth from the poor and channel it towards their regime, right? And this is the same paradigm that is going on today. That's why the Bible, like I've said before, if you were to look at it with this deeper insight, the same existential situations are still at play. It's just the costumes and the sets are different. But the same game is being run. And when you can see it that way, you can then do something about it, right? Purify the heart and then be a force for change in the world by just being the change, right? Somebody said that before, right? Somebody that overthrew an empire. So the Torah, this law code that was given to Moses, who came out of Egypt, which was an oppressive empire, it's a very different structure for society. And I just want to give you a smattering of texts to give you sort of the socioeconomic position that God takes in developing this model for society. Let's see, this is taken from the book of Leviticus. You are to keep my statutes and ordinances and carefully observe them so that you may live securely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit so that you can eat, be satisfied, and live securely in the land. If your brother becomes destitute and cannot sustain himself among you, you are to support him as a foreigner or temporary resident so that he can continue to live among you. Do not profit or take interest from him, but fear your God and let your brother live among you. You are not to lend him your silver with interest or sell him your food for profit. I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. If your brother becomes destitute and sells himself to you, you must not force him to do slave labor. Let him stay with you as a hired hand or temporary resident. He may work for you until the year of Jubilee. So, in other words, then mercy is being given and really ordered, right? Do my ordinances and commandments. And so your brother is never oppressed. And one of the big things in the Old Testament law code is you never lend at interest. This was carried out, at least in theory, for a little while, and then the Christian church picked this up, and the Catholic Church, up until, I guess, the creation of the Vatican Bank, was going along this way too, where interest loans were anathema. Muhammad in the Quran, in Arabic, it's called riba, and riba, loans at interest, are abominable. They are not to be done because what it does is it enslaves a population. When you tax somebody or charge interest on loans, they'll never be able to pay them back and get out of the hole. And so God is saying, literally, he says this in Leviticus, you shall not have poor among you. I don't want my people poor. Everyone should have enough, right? So this is the foundation of this idea that's being promoted within the Jewish law code. And then get this now, wouldn't this be nice? At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. So he's speaking to the governing bodies of the Jewish society. Everybody gets debt-free in 7 years. This is how to cancel debt. Every creditor is to cancel what he has lent his neighbor. He is not to collect anything from his neighbor or brother, because the Lord releases all debts. You may collect something from a foreigner or an immigrant, but you must forgive whatever your brother owes you. There will be no poor among you. However, because the Lord is certain to bless you in the land, and then he reminds them that, when you're lending to the poor, don't have any interest in your loans. And he always has the powerful reflect, you were once slaves in Egypt. You know what it's like to be oppressed. Don't carry that forward. Don't be an oppressor, right? Be a giver, not a taker. This was a society that was based on neighborliness, right? That everyone will have. A couple more things here. And this is great too. Think about this. When you make a loan of any kind to your neighbor, do not enter his house to collect what he offers as security. In other words, don't embarrass him. Always give the people that owe you dignity, right? Do not oppress a hired hand, a subsistence worker who is poor and needy, whether one of your brothers or an immigrant. You are to pay him his wages each day before the sun sets. And then get this. When you reap the harvest in your field and you forget a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. It's to be left for the immigrant, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you knock down the fruit from your olive tree, you must not go over the branches again. What remains will be for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, when you gather the grapes off of your vines. You must not glean what is left. What remains will be for the immigrant, the fatherless, and the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. So what you have going on here is compassion, that you're not going to take more than you need so that everyone can prosper. Remember, the fatherless, they don't have a family line. They don't have landed wealth, right? So they're, just wandering, looking for anything. A widow doesn't have a husband to support her, right? So she's dependent and doesn't have enough coming in on her own. And an immigrant. And so that's the way you're supposed to treat those that are at the lowest rungs on the social ladder. Make sure that you don't take more than you need and give to those who don't have. Could be one of the reasons why we've thrown the Bible out of our society. We say that it's because it's just outmoded mythological bunk, but, we are far from this social paradigm. It's a real threat. So, Jesus also says this a lot, where, we are all servants, right? So he tells this story in Matthew's gospel where a servant owes his master money, and the master forgives the servant. And, first the servant falls on his face, please forgive me, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And the master forgives him. And then the servant goes out, and somebody else owes that guy money, and he throttles him. And he basically says, you're going to the court with me, and you're going to be in jail until you can pay everything back. And so this idea of those people who are affluent and don't realize that they are servants or slaves to God are mistreating the people that are in the same existential situation that they're in. We're all poor and needy, right? But depending on how we treat somebody is also the way that we're going to be treated, right? That, like it's said in the Quran, if we're oppressing somebody, something will come around to oppress us. And so this idea of giving abundantly, especially when you are affluent and you have, is one of the ways to purify the heart. And so getting back to Hamza Youssef's book, this is the first step on this path where we look at the disease of the heart called miserliness. So miserliness, one of the ways that miserliness can show up is, we are not giving to charity, or we're not giving to, let's say, our ex-wife and our children, right? We're not giving them child support or what have you. Another way that this idea of miserliness is showing up is that we would lose valor if we don't give in this way, right? So in terms of valor, one should never create difficulty. So this is for those who have, right, what we were just talking about. One should never create difficulty over paltry matters. When it comes to debt, it is far better for the creditor to be flexible and magnanimous than demanding and unbearable. This is especially true when the creditor is not in need of repayment, while the debtor faces hardship. An understanding and compassionate creditor is one who has valor. Having this quality of magnanimity is not an obligation in sacred law because the creditor has the right to what is owed to him. But if he is apathetic to the needs of the debtor and insists on his payment, this is considered reprehensible. A person who doles out difficulty without cause strips away the veils of dignity. Right? So this is, again, those who are lending at interest, setting up an economy of debt slavery, right? What we're seeing in our society, where you can't afford to live because the minimum wage is so low. Even if you have 3 jobs, you can't pay your bills, right? Generally speaking. So you need credit cards in order to live. And credit card interest rates are just ridiculous now. I remember you used to sign up, you get like 8%, 12% tops, like 24%. And there's no, if you have good credit, it goes down. So he's saying here, a person who doles out difficulty without cause strips away the veils of dignity. This is what the wise guides have said. It is equally regrettable when one discharges an obligation or fulfills a trust without good cheer. In Islam, it is anathema to give away in charity what is... let's skip that. So generosity is one of the highest virtues, and Let's skip that. Okay, so miserliness is one of the diseases of the heart. This one is also interesting. It's fear of poverty. Okay, so when we're living in this society that is causing struggle on a financial level, oftentimes we're afraid of, are we going to be able to pay our bills? Are we going to be able to make it through? So fear of poverty is counted as one of the diseases of the heart for the reasons that follow. Scholars have said that nurturing this fear is tantamount to harboring a negative opinion about God the Exalted, who has revealed in the Quran, Satan threatens you with poverty and he commands you to immorality, but God promises you his forgiveness and bounty. So this is Hamza Youssef now. One of Satan's tactics is to keep people so occupied with the fear of losing their wealth, they end up desperately clinging to their money and depriving the needy and themselves of the goodness of giving for the sake of God. A person under the spell of such strong fear would be vulnerable to transgress laws and indulge in poor behavior in order to gain profit or wealth. And so the reason why it's a disease of the heart is because in truth, God is the provider and the source of all wealth. But if we're keeping our eyes fixed on this realm of deprivation and lack, we're blocking out the higher world from reaching our awareness. Right? Think about it as music. So your mind is like a transducer, like a TV or a radio, and it's picking up this unmanifest or unseen transmission, like music. Music is broadcast or transmitted in a non-spatial kind of way. And your mind transduces those frequencies and brings it into manifestation. So the world of debt and lack is a music. And if you stay tuned in to that music, you cannot hear the other station. Your mind is fixed on this station. Same space, same mind. If you were to change the channel, you would pick up a different transmission and you would know and experience the provisions of God. That's why Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and everything else will be added on to you. Everything that you need will be given to you. But don't tune in to the world that worships Mammon, the god of wealth and financial security and success and making a name for yourself. Because if you're measuring your life based on these false measures, then you're going to feel insecurity and possibly fear poverty and block out the music that's right here, right now, if you were to just change the station and seek the higher truth, like one whose head is being held underwater. So listen to this now. The fear of poverty is an instrument of deception and cause of misguidance. Sit with that for a moment. The fear of poverty is a deception. And it is a cause for misguidance, right? You lose your integrity. You lose your self-control. You lose your dignity and your valor when you're in fear of poverty. You're willing to stoop a little bit, compromise a little bit, cut corners a little bit, do a little dishonest fudging on your taxes, whatever that looks like. Now, the American humorist Mark Twain once remarked, most of my problems I never actually encountered. So we oftentimes drum up these fearful scenarios of what is it going to be like when I lose everything and I'm not going to have enough. And we get caught in this fantasy of creating the most fearful scenarios. And down the way a little bit when things clear and we look back, never met those problems. They never really came to fruition. It was our own mind undergoing the misguidance. A person can grieve over a plethora of concerns and problems that he or she may never face. These phantom concerns can be controlling. A person who has wealth is constantly worried about his estate and its potential loss. The cure for fear of poverty is to have a good opinion of God. God states in the Quran, "I do not desire from people any provision, nor do I desire that they feed me." So in other words, the picture that you get of God in the Quran is God is a constant giver. God is giving, not taking. So this idea that, we're suffering because it's our lot and God has cursed us is another form of misguidance or misunderstanding. It's that we're tuned into the wrong station. So we can continue to manifest our scarcity, or we can open up to the kingdom and everything will be provided for us as we need it. People who harbor good thoughts about their provider deflect insidious whisperings about him and the subtle provocations that create irrational fear. His dominion is never diminished in the least when he gives to his creation all that they need. And if someone is given more than another, one should not harbor bad thoughts toward that person. Wholesome thoughts about God express themselves in one's contentment with what he or she has, and not stretching one's eyes toward the assets of others. The prophet said, "Contentment is a treasure that is never exhausted." One should not worry for what is determined for a person. Rather, one should not worry, for what is determined for a person shall come to him or her. Right? You cannot withhold or stop what's really yours. It will find you. So let's just get the overall scope again of what we're doing here this morning. We're undergoing an alchemical transformation. And as we've said, this alchemy is changing our state of ignorance into a state of knowledge. The lead of our being is being transmuted into gold. Our biological nature is undergoing a transfiguration into a spiritual nature. In order for that to kickstart, we have to purify the heart. So the purifications are like the spark plugs. And that's what's going to start this process moving in our life. And one of the main things that we find in our heart that is an obstacle, I think, and the reason why it was chosen this morning, I didn't choose it, it just came, is our love of money and our fear of poverty. Right? And it's because, and this is interesting, he says in A Course in Miracles, it's not that the love of money is the root of all evil. It's the authority problem that is the root of all evil. Money is just a byproduct of the authority problem. The authority problem is, I really own stuff. I really control stuff. I'm important. I'm better than that person. So all of this idea of authority, power, making a name for yourself, is at the heart of discordant wealth. Right? So this purification of this getting concept is really a major step in the alchemy. Right? So instead of trying to get and own and possess, we need to open and give ourselves, become impoverished towards God, and then everything will flow into manifestation from that non-spatial, unborn reality. Right? Can't look to the world for our wealth. Right? We will be given things to do in the world that will assure things come, and it may look on a practical level, this is what I did to get this. But it all, as we were just seeing from this book, originates from the unseen. You're manifesting the condition of your heart. So finally here, and this goes right in accordance with everything that we've been talking about. Another disease of the heart is obliviousness to blessings. So when we are fearing that we're not going to have enough money, when we're struggling, it's unfair, these guys are taking more than they need, and blah, 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 we're always in that, when we're in that state of mind, overlooking how blessed we are. How many blessings are in our life? And as we begin to focus on these blessings, we'll see that, Sheikh Hamza Youssef gives the blessing of being able to blink. And that some people don't have tear ducts. So you're sitting here blinking thousands of times in the day. And what if you didn't have tear ducts, right? That would be one setback. Or just the ability for most of us to get up and walk across the floor without pain, without struggle, just to walk is a blessing, right? This is kind of where they're going here, but then it moves on. There are countless blessings. While we cannot count all of our blessings, we are charged to be grateful for having them. Let's see, I'll just pick one thing here to read. Oh, here's good. This is good. Ignorance urges people to see only short-term relief as a blessing and to ignore the benefits of patience and temporary discomfort. Knowledge opens the eyes to the long-term benefit, which lasts forever, right? So we are in an instantaneous, instant gratification society. And if we're not getting our needs instantly met and we don't see the numbers in our bank account today, or things are not working or flowing the way we think they should right now, then we can fly off the handle, get upset, start drumming up fantasies, and all of these fears can start whispering in our ear. And what he's saying is this is also part of testing your character. Certain things are being withheld or slowed down or brought to a trickle in your life. Things are disturbing you on purpose to rub you so that you can see your character flaws and make those efforts to purify them, deal with them, purify and heal them. And so he says there was a study done on children where researchers left cookies out on a table and told the children that they can have either one cookie now or two later. You've probably heard of this. Consistently, the children who scored better on intelligence tests waited for the two-cookie option. After following these children for 30 years, those who opted for the long-term gain were better adjusted, better educated, and were more successful in their relationships and marriages because they can delay their gratification. They can control their urge to get and hold out for the long-term benefit. So there is a necessary link between intelligence and morality, the willingness to put off a short-term gain for a long-term benefit that ultimately is greater and everlasting. This is the kind of intelligence that is conditioned in the spiritual life. Okay? So again, we see before the Torah, or even when the Torah was being given, they left Egypt, they left the empire of the predatory system, and they were in the wilderness, and they were undergoing the hardships of the wilderness, delayed comfort, right? they were not getting all of their needs met the way that they used to in the empire. And so many of them wanted to go back. And many of them became bitter and angry for being in that situation. And so if you're finding this in your spiritual life, like if you're really giving your heart to God, you're really in this, you're committed, and you're in a dry spell perhaps, or in a wilderness experience, bear with it. Know that you can trust the process. This is a necessary step in purifying your heart. Otherwise, you can't pick up the frequency of that higher world if your heart is set upon the instant gratification of the lower world and the animal nature. So it was saying that with ignorance, we have this knee-jerk reaction to desire the short-term gratification, right? And ignorance is what we start with when we're in this spiritual journey to undergo the alchemical transformation. And I just thought it would be maybe more insightful for us to get another definition of ignorance from the yoga tradition of Patanjali. So look at how he defines ignorance, or avidya in Sanskrit. Ignorance consists in regarding a transient object as everlasting. Right? Everything here, including your body, is going to poof out of existence. It's all dust. It's all temporary. There's nothing here that will last. Right? Ignorance is thinking that you can find security and trust in these impermanent things. Right? Ignorance is seeing an impure object as pure, seeing misery as happiness, and the not self as the self. So this is where we start, according to the spiritual teachings. We start within this ignorant state and this veiled understanding of what is real and unreal. And we don't see anything for what it really is. We only see the projection of our own desires. So that's why when we do undergo a spiritual journey, usually we find difficulty because, as we see in A Course in Miracles, the first step is what he calls a period of unsettling. And that means that he says things will be taken away when you start to undergo the spiritual life. Oftentimes people will leave, jobs will fail, marriages will break apart, maybe finances drop down. This period of unsettling. And it's to show you that your value has been placed on the impermanent, and to begin to redirect you towards trusting only in God, desiring only God, because that is the singularity that is going to get you out of the black iron prison, right, of false appearances. Well, I think that's all I got, ladies and gentlemen. Blue bag can go around if there is a blue bag to be had. If you are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, we encourage you to click on the link and donate to the service. The church and I greatly appreciate your support. Any thoughts, questions? David. So what is the responsibility of a giver? In other words, how do you regulate your giving?
Well, not just that. How do you you may not regulate it, but you may kind of plan ahead. Now, we're all kind of induced to be investors. Especially if you're a certain age, you better have been some kind of investor. And you don't mind giving, I think, a little more than you feel comfortable with,
Hmm.
on the generosity part. But what is the responsibility for obviously pouring something into an investment, like food production or garden or something like that, uh, and pouring it down the gutter? In other words, how do you, we talk quite a bit about the advantages and the spiritual pathway of being generous and so on, but
Hmm.
I can't help but feel that I have some kind of culpability over,
To give back to the community in some tangible way, you're
some
saying?
sort of culpability to be responsible. I don't really expect people that I would be giving things to all be responsible, because if I think if they were, they probably wouldn't be in that position.
Well, you often quote the Bhagavad Gita in terms of karma yoga, where you're giving without any desire to see a result. And so this giving is a giving really to God, right? That's what the Gita wants us to think of when we're giving, that this is all done in service to God, right? So when we give, that's why, Jesus says in the gospel, when you give to the least of these, my neighbors, you give to me. So everyone is the Christ. And this is a great experiment to do when you're in your everyday walk, where everyone is Jesus in drag, right? Everybody is Jesus in disguise. And so this is where the rubber meets the road in, how we're showing up with our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. But then in terms of how much or what to give, I wouldn't in any way venture into thinking that I know. In fact, this is the other point. It's like you actually don't know. And you are quieting down the music of the lower nature so that you can hear the transmission of the higher nature. That's why he says in A Course in Miracles, miracles, which are love offerings, right? Gifts, are not to be voluntary. They're to be under his control. So whatever way, whatever form your miracle giving shows up, that is to be under his direction only. And you'll know when it's not, because you're not really getting the connection with him that the offering was meant to have. So this, I think, is a way of determining what, how much, and to whom. And then hands off. Like,
You did kind of calm that down, and maybe one way to say it, or I understand it, is my job is to become entirely ready.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Silent, open, yeah. Willing to do. Bless the offering. We thank the generous offering, and we charge it with the intention that it brings light and freedom to the hearts in whatever form it may take. So it is. Amen. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, comments? Tricia.
The talk eases the burden of when bad things happen to me or when things feel really not good. It helps me understand that this too shall pass, and
Mhm.
this is just a process to
So
go
seeing
through.
the temporary nature of all setbacks and challenges, knowing that they will pass. And, while we're undergoing them, to do it with both eyes open, so to speak. Like to really know that this is, pointing out something that I should be really paying attention to. Yeah, polishing the heart. Yeah, good. All right, shall I seal the deal? And we come to rest in the silence of the heart, opening to the presence of grace and the truly abundant life of the Christ within. And in this place of rest and bounty, we know that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us, wherever we are. Amen. Oh, sorry, wherever we are, God is. Amen. Jumping the gun there. Amen. Thank you so very much for being here this morning. We'd love to see you tomorrow night, A Course in Miracles, 7:15 p.m. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, Hank.